When you buy a stock on margin, you essentially borrow money from your broker to buy more stock, and you use that stock as collateral. Let's look at an example. Meet John. John has $5,000 he would like to invest in XYZ Company. John strongly believes XYZ Company is going to move higher, and he would like to invest on margin. He contacts his broker to be sure that his account qualifies for margin. He intends to invest $5,000 of his cash in XYZ Company. He has a few other investments as well, but we are going to ignore those for this example. His broker approves him for a margin account, and they are satisfied with his account balance since it is greater than their minimum account balance for margin accounts, which in this case is $2,000. First, his broker explains, there's an initial margin requirement. Currently, that requirement is 50%, and keep in mind, the initial margin requirement is set by the Federal Reserve, and they have the right to change it whenever they want. Although it is interesting to note that the Federal Reserve has changed the margin requirement 23 times since this policy started back in 1934. But the current rate of 50% was set in 1974 and hasn't changed since then. John jumps in. So this 50% initial margin requirement, this means that when I first get into an investment, I must put up at least 50% of the cash needed for this position. Yes, the broker replies. So with my $5,000, I can purchase $10,000 worth of stock. Yes, exactly. If you have a $10,000 position in XYZ Company, the rule states you must initially put up at least 50%, which in this case is $5,000. So to use your example, you bought $10,000 worth of XYZ Company, and you posted $5,000 to initiate the position. This satisfied the initial margin requirement of 50%. This means that at the start of your investment, you have 50% equity and 50% debt. Your 50% equity is from the XYZ shares that you own, and your 50% debt is the other $5,000 you borrowed from your broker. Now, it's important to know that, like all debt, you will be charged interest on this $5,000 debt. So if your investment in XYZ Company rises by 25%, well then, your account is now worth $12,250. And if you sold your XYZ Company shares right then, ignoring any commissions or interest charges, you would automatically pay back your broker the $5,000 they let you borrow, and you would be left with $7,500. And since you only put up $5,000 as an initial investment, that means you are up $2,500 on your $5,000 investment, which is a 50% return. This is a good example of why people use margin on investments. It helps amplify their returns. But on the other hand, if the value of the stock falls, it is possible you get what is known as a margin call. A margin call is a notice from us, your broker, requiring you to post more cash into your account. John once again jumps in with a question. What determines if I get a margin call or not? Great question, says the broker. So the initial margin requirement we discussed before is how much you must initially put up when you enter a margin position. But once you are in the position, what takes over is known as the maintenance margin. Sometimes it's also called the maintenance requirement. This is typically set by the stock exchange or the broker, not the Federal Reserve. Right now, the New York Stock Exchange usually requires a minimum of 25% for a maintenance margin. But in our case, our brokerage firm requires a maintenance margin of 35%. But this can vary from account to account and broker to broker. So going back to your example, if your $10,000 investment in XYZ Company falls by 25% instead of rising by 25%, well then your account is now worth $7,500. You still owe the $5,000 you borrowed from the broker, which means your equity position is only $2,500. And since your $2,500 equity is only 33 1/3% of the entire $7,500 value, and that 33 1/3% is less than our maintenance margin requirement of 35%, you will receive a margin call. If a margin call happens, you will be required to deposit enough cash into your account to get the value back above the 35% maintenance margin. Then John asks, what happens if I can't make a deposit? Well, if you're unable or unwilling to make a deposit, then your broker will sell your position and the $5,000 margin debt you had will be paid back to the broker immediately, leaving you with the remaining $2,500, which turns out to be a 50% loss on your XYZ investment. As you can tell, margin has a way of magnifying returns. If you're doing well, margins can make your gains better, but if you're losing money, margins can hurt your returns just as easily. If you have any questions about the world of investing, any suggestions on videos, please post in the comments below, and please subscribe as we continue to update with new videos every week. Thank you.